I was standing in my kitchen, sunlight spilling through the tall windows, the scent of freshly brewed coffee curling into the air, when a thick ivory envelope caught my eye again. It sat there on the counter, like it owned the place, my brother Michael's wedding invitation. The front had my name written in perfect calligraphy, the kind you'd expect from a magazine spread. But it was the inside that made my stomach clench. No plus ones. The words were tucked neatly in a line beneath the date and venue, like a casual afterthought. I'd read them the moment I opened it, but somehow they'd felt sharper today, like the ink had darkened overnight. I wrapped my silk robe tighter around me, sipping my coffee. My life was good now, better than good, but there were certain truths I never spoke out loud. Not to my friends.
Not to my family.
Definitely not to Michael. A week later, the sting of those 3 little words was replaced by something far worse. I was scrolling through Instagram before my morning run when a photo stopped me cold. Michael, grinning wide in his tux, arms slung over the shoulder of his best man. And there he was, Daniel Parker, my ex, the man who had shattered my heart like it was nothing. My thumb hovered over the screen, heat rushing to my face. I could almost hear the laughter from the reception hall, smell the cologne I used to know too well. The irony hit me like a punch, no plus ones for me, but my ex was standing at the altar beside my brother. I set the phone down and stared out the window, the city's skyline blurring. Somewhere beneath the anger was a quiet vow forming, the kind that changes everything. 2 years ago, I would have told you my life was perfectly mapped out. I was 27, engaged to Daniel Parker, the kind of man everyone seemed to adore. He was charming in public, calculated in private, and he had a knack for making me feel like my achievements were accidental. Michael had loved him from day one. They played basketball together on weekends, shared the same jokes about politics, even had a running bet over football season. Sometimes, I'd watch them laughing in the backyard during family barbecues and feel like I was the extra in my own relationship. The night everything fell apart, it was raining. I remember because my hair stuck to my cheeks as I stood in Michael's driveway, my suitcase in hand. Daniel had followed me there, not to apologize, but to make his case in front of my family, to convince them I was overreacting. Michael's voice had been low, calm, almost too calm. Liv, maybe you should just hear him out. I'd stared at my brother, the lump in my throat, making it hard to breathe. You think I'm walking away from this for no reason? No one spoke. My mother fidgeted with her wedding ring. My father avoided my eyes. And Daniel looked like he'd already won. That was the moment I realized. If I stayed, I'd spend the rest of my life explaining my pain to people who had already chosen not to believe it. I reached into my coat pocket and felt the cool metal of my grandmother's bracelet, a delicate silver band she'd given me when I graduated college. She'd said, "Olivia, you don't let anyone decide your worth. Not a boss, not a man, not even family." I didn't say another word. I just walked to my car, rain soaking the hem of my dress, the bracelet warm against my skin from the heat of my hand. The drive to my apartment was silent except for the rhythmic slap of the windshield wipers. My hands shook on the steering wheel, and my breath came in ragged bursts. I wasn't sure if I was crying from heartbreak or relief. By the time I stepped into my empty living room, suitcase by my side, I knew one thing for certain. They might see me as fragile now, but one day, they'd see who I really was. The first few months after leaving Daniel and my family's orbit felt like stepping into an unfamiliar city without a map. I worked my marketing job by day, but nights were for something else entirely, scouring freelance boards, taking online courses, learning every skill I could about digital branding and business development. It wasn't glamorous. My office was the corner of my living room, my desk an old dining table I'd found on Craigslist. I lived on instant noodles, cheap coffee, and determination. One night, while half asleep at my laptop, I stumbled onto an online networking event hosted by a woman named Rebecca Cole. She was a powerhouse in the marketing world, sharp, confident, with a laugh that made you feel like she already knew you. I almost didn't speak up, but when I did, she remembered my name. 2 weeks later, she called. "I like your ideas, Olivia. You've got an instinct for this." Ever thought about running your own agency? I laughed because it sounded absurd, me running an agency? But Rebecca didn't laugh back. She offered to mentor me, and just like that, the game changed. The first year was brutal. Clients canceled last minute, proposals got ignored, and more than once I thought about quitting. But then came the first big break, a boutique hotel in Miami looking for a full rebrand. I poured everything into it, late nights, endless revisions, even flying out on my own dime to get the perfect photos. When the campaign went live, it exploded. The hotel's bookings doubled in 3 months, and suddenly, my inbox wasn't empty anymore. From there, I built slowly. A coffee roaster in Seattle, a wellness retreat in Sedona, an online fashion startup in New York. Each win was another brick in the foundation I was quietly laying. I never posted the flashy stuff on social media. My family thought I was still doing some marketing job in the city. That was fine with me. I wanted my growth to be mine alone, without commentary or backhanded congratulations. Rebecca became my anchor. She'd call me out when I played small, remind me to raise my rates, tell me to buy the nicer blazer for meetings. When I landed my first 6-figure contract, she sent me a bottle of champagne and a note that read, "This is just the beginning, Liv." A year later, I signed the lease on my own office, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the skyline, and space for a small but mighty team. I'd walk in each morning with my coffee, set my bag on my glass desk, and feel the quiet hum of satisfaction. Not the loud, showy kind, but the deep, steady pulse of knowing I had built something from scratch. By the time Michael's wedding invitation arrived, my agency was on track to break $1 million in revenue. My client list included brands most people only read about in glossy magazines. And still, they didn't know. They'd chosen to believe I was fragile once. I'd chosen to let them. The wedding weekend arrived on a crisp October Friday. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke as I pulled my charcoal gray Tesla into the circular driveway of the Willow Creek estate, the kind of venue with manicured lawns and a fountain that seemed to pour out pure arrogance. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a deep emerald satin gown with a low back, paired with diamond drop earrings I'd bought myself after landing my biggest contract. My hair was swept into a sleek chignon, a red lip adding the final punctuation. Inside, the place buzzed with the chaotic joy of pre-ceremony chatter. Michael spotted me first, doing a double take before walking over. "Olivia, you look," he paused, as if realizing a compliment might shift the balance between us. "You made it." "Of course," I said smoothly, glancing past him toward the man standing at the bar. Daniel Parker, in a tailored navy tuxedo, looking every bit the polished best man. His eyes found mine, flickered with something unreadable, and then he looked away. I didn't bother pretending I hadn't noticed. The ceremony went off without a hitch. I kept my face neutral as Daniel stood beside Michael, handing over the rings, smiling in the photos. But the real scene began at the reception. Halfway through dinner, Michael leaned over. "Hey, I want to show you something." I followed him toward a side room, a quiet lounge with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the garden. And there, already waiting, was Daniel. The air shifted. "Olivia," Daniel started, his voice smooth, as if no time had passed. "It's been a while." "Not long enough," I said, settling into one of the leather armchairs. Michael looked between us, clearly expecting some sort of reunion. "You two, you were great together." "I don't know why." "Michael," I cut in, my voice calm but razor-sharp. "You don't know because you never asked. You assumed." He blinked, thrown off by my tone. I reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone, swiping to a portfolio app. In seconds, the screen filled with images, high-profile campaigns, luxury brand launches, magazine features. "This," I said, holding it out to Michael, "is what I've been doing the last 2 years. I run Cole and Company. Branding. That boutique hotel in Miami you took Mom to last summer? My team rebranded it. The wellness retreat you saw on that Netflix travel show? Also mine." Michael scrolled, his mouth parting slightly. "You own this." "I built it," I corrected. "From scratch. While you were worried about me being too emotional to handle a breakup." I turned to Daniel. His jaw was tight now, the confidence in his posture faltering. I don't need to know what stories you told to land yourself as best man, Daniel. But whatever version you've been selling, it's outdated. I'm not the woman you left standing in the rain. Silence settled in the room, heavy but satisfying. Michael cleared his throat. Liv, I didn't realize. Exactly, I said. You didn't realize because you didn't look. I stood, smoothing the skirt of my gown. I came here to celebrate your wedding, Michael. That's all. But I needed you both to know. I'm not the one who lost anything here. I left them in that lounge, their drinks untouched, their silence louder than any apology could have been. When I stepped back into the reception, the music felt brighter, the lights warmer. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying their opinion of me on my shoulders. And that, I thought, was worth far more than any toast they could have offered. The next morning, I was sipping coffee in the hotel lobby when Michael approached. He looked different, not just tired from the reception, but unsettled, like someone who had seen a version of reality they hadn't expected. Can we talk? He asked. I nodded toward an empty table in the corner. He sat down, leaning forward on his elbows. Liv, I honestly didn't know about your company, your success. I thought you were keeping quiet because things weren't going well. That's the problem, Michael, I said evenly. You assumed the worst. And you made choices, like making my ex your best man, without thinking how they'd affect me. That's not respect. He winced. You're right. I messed up. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence stretch just long enough. Here's the thing. I'm not looking for you to grovel. But if we're going to have a relationship moving forward, there are terms. He raised an eyebrow. Terms? Yes. First, no more speaking for me or about me when I'm not in the room. If you want to know something, you ask me directly. Second, I'm done being the sister you protect only when it's convenient. If you're in my life, you show up consistently. And third, if you bring people into your life who've hurt me, you give me a heads up. I'll decide if I'm comfortable being around them. Michael nodded slowly, processing each point. Fair. All of it. I set my mug down. Good. Because I care about you, Michael. But I won't go back to the dynamic we had before. Later that afternoon, as I was packing to leave, I ran into Daniel in the hallway. He leaned casually against the wall, trying for the same effortless charm he'd always used. You look happy, he said, as if it were surprising. I am, I replied. Happier than I ever was with you. His smile faltered. No hard feelings then? I gave a small, deliberate smile. No hard feelings. But no friendship either. My life is full, Daniel. And there's no room in it for people who treated me like I was disposable. I walked past him without looking back. Back in my room, I slipped on my grandmother's bracelet and caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the same Olivia who had stood in the rain 2 years ago. This version had boundaries, confidence, and control over who was allowed into her world. The wedding might have been Michael's big day, but in my own way, I'd claimed something too, a seat at the table of my own life, one where I made the rules. By the time I pulled out of the Willow Creek parking lot, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in streaks of gold and rose. The road ahead felt lighter than it had in years, like I'd finally unloaded a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there. 2 weeks later, Michael called. His voice was hesitant but different. I've been thinking about what you said. About showing up consistently. I'm working on it. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. That's all I ask. Over the next few months, little changes began to show. Michael started calling just to check in, not to fish for gossip. When our cousin threw a holiday party, he texted me beforehand to say Daniel wouldn't be there. And for the first time in years, I believed he meant it when he said, I want you there, Liv. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One quiet Sunday morning, I sat at my kitchen island with coffee, scrolling through my agency's new campaign results. The numbers were better than expected, another win in a year that felt full of them. I reached for my grandmother's bracelet, the silver catching the light. Her words echoed in my mind as clearly as if she were sitting beside me. You don't let anyone decide your worth. Back then, I'd clung to that advice like a lifeline. Now, it felt less like survival and more like truth woven into my bones. I thought about that wedding invitation, the no plus ones printed like a boundary I didn't get to cross, and the irony that had followed. They had once decided who was worthy of standing beside them. Now I was the one deciding who was worthy of standing beside me. I poured myself another cup of coffee, the city skyline glowing through my window. My life was full, my circle small but solid. The past didn't sting anymore. It simply reminded me of how far I'd come. I whispered it aloud. Not for anyone else but for me. I'm not the one who lost anything here.